In the United Methodist Church, what is the legislative process at General Conference? Great question. In this video, I give an overview of how legislation makes its way through General Conference from an idea to an approved policy or position of the United Methodist Church. If you're curious about General Conference itself, I have another video that gives an overview of what goes on. You can watch it here. To begin with, any United Methodist organization or member can submit legislation to General Conference. Legislative topics can start from an idea, a passion around a social issue, or perhaps something that needs to be fixed in the current system. For example, an annual conference, caucus, or individual member might submit legislation advocating for a current topic of moral concern. The Board of Directors of a United Methodist General Agency may submit legislation to update that agency's policies or mandates. In 2016, 1,068 distinct petitions were submitted to the General Conference. As of filming this video, we don't yet know how many petitions were submitted for the 2020 General Conference. The deadline to submit legislation is 230 days before the start of General Conference. Legislation is submitted to the Petitions Secretary, who confirms that each petition conforms to submission requirements and assigns it a unique ID number. After the submitted legislation is processed, it goes through translation into the 4 official written languages of General Conference for printing in the Advance Daily Christian Advocate, or ADCA: English, French, Kiswahili, and Portuguese. The ADCA is sent to all voting delegates and made available for others to review as well. The ADCA must be distributed at least 90 days before General Conference begins. Delegates review the proposed legislation before General Conference so that they are prepared on the background and potential implications of the legislation that they will vote on. With so many petitions to cover, I have found it helpful as a delegate to make a special study of the legislation that will be addressed in my chosen legislative committee, while other members of my delegation do the same. Then we each share summaries of the key highlights of our committee's legislation. At the 2020 General Conference, there will be 14 legislative committees organized by topic areas. They are Church and Society 1, 2, and 3, Conferences, Discipleship, Faith and Order, Financial Administration, General Administration, Global Ministries, Higher Education and Superintendency, Independent Commissions, Judicial Administration, Local Church, and Ordained Ministry. The Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters handles legislation dealing with the central conferences or with autonomous and affiliated churches located within the central conferences. Petitions are assigned to a committee based on the paragraph in the Book of Discipline or the Book of Resolutions topic that the petition covers. Once General Conference convenes, legislative committees and the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters are the first groups to take action on petitions. Legislative committees consider each petition using a process that combines parliamentary procedure and Christian conferencing, debating the merits and making amendments to perfect the legislation. Sometimes, legislative committees break into subcommittees to better manage a large number of petitions. The subcommittee can debate and amend each item before making a report to the full legislative committee, which again has an opportunity to debate and amend before taking a vote to recommend for or against a petition. The legislative committees are required to take a vote on every legislative item assigned to their committee. The actions taken by a committee on each legislative item are recorded the next day in the Daily Christian Advocate, or DCA. These actions are recorded in categories. Legislation goes on the consent calendar if a sufficiently high number of committee members voted to recommend the item or refer it. Other legislative items that passed in committee by a smaller margin are sent to the full General Conference plenary for action. Non-calendar items are those pieces of legislation that are not supported by the legislative committee, and they are also reported in the DCA. Once the result of a committee's action on a legislative item is printed in the DCA, all delegates have a chance to review the committee's recommendation. Legislative items on the consent calendar get voted on as a unit the day after they were printed in the DCA. Other legislative petitions that need action are presented one by one in plenary session by the Legislative Committee chairperson and considered by all delegates. While a petition is being considered in plenary, delegates have a final opportunity to make amendments and give speeches for or against the legislation before taking a final vote. Every petition approved by a legislative committee must get a vote by the full General Conference plenary body. Once General Conference adjourns, all legislation that passed becomes the official voice of the United Methodist Church. The date that the legislation takes effect depends on how the legislation is written. It also may have different effective dates in the U.S. and Central Conferences. Changes to the United Methodist Church's laws and structure will be printed in the next Book of Discipline, and changes to the Church's official positions on social issues will be printed in the next Book of Resolutions. To review, legislation at General Conference starts as an idea, is submitted for consideration, is sorted to a legislative committee for review and recommendation, and is finally voted on by the full body of delegates. That, in a nutshell, is the process that legislation goes through at our United Methodist General Conference. If you have any questions about what I covered here, or suggestions for future topics, please comment below. You can also subscribe to this channel to get notices about my future videos. Thanks for watching.